Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and once again we have kind of an emergency video for this week because, as many of you know, I'm sure, Kristaps Porzingis has been officially traded to the Dallas Mavericks. This is incredibly weird timing because earlier today there were some reports coming out that the Knicks and Porzingis had a meeting that didn't go entirely well. He expressed some concerns with the future of the franchise and all of the losing and just kind of where he fit in the future of the Knicks. And seemingly hours after that, reports surfaced that he was, yes, traded to the Dallas Mavericks. Now, as of recording this video, things are pretty official, but it hasn't actually gone through yet. But by the time you're watching this, it probably will be. So like I said, in a bit of an emergency video fashion, I'm just going to talk about the trade, the details that we have as of now, and just some of the impact for both the Mavs, the Knicks, and the rest of the league as a whole. So just to make things clear, per Mark Stein, the deal is Kristaps Porzingis, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Courtney Lee to the Dallas Mavericks in exchange for Dennis Smith Jr., DeAndre Jordan, Wes Matthews, and quote, future draft compensation, which I'm assuming is either a 2021 or 2023 future first round pick from the Dallas Mavericks with some kind of protection on it. The reason for that is obviously the Mavs owe their 2019 first to the Hawks and they can't trade their own first round pick in back-to-back years. Let's first talk about the impact of this trade on the Dallas Mavericks. First up, obviously they get Kristaps Porzingis, who is a bright young star that showed a ton of promise and potential in his first couple of seasons in the league and also produced at a fairly high level before suffering a knee injury last year that he is still recovering from and is yet to return from so far this season. They also get two nice additions on the wing in Tim Hardaway Jr. and Courtney Lee. Hardaway Jr., a player that has scored really well for the Knicks so far this season, but has kind of been miscast as a leading scorer in a leading role for the Knicks, and on the Mavericks he should be much more efficient. And then Courtney Lee gives them some 3-and-D talent to once again fill out their perimeter rotation in exchange for some of the guys that they gave up in this deal. And in exchange, on the surface, they give up a surprisingly little amount for a player of Porzingis' caliber, as well as the additions of Hardaway and Courtney Lee. They give up Dennis Smith Jr., who is still a promising young player only in his second year in the league, but there were some rumblings that they might end up trading him before this deadline just because they were questioning his fit alongside Luka Doncic at the one in terms of his ability to play off the ball and more specifically shoot. They also give up the expiring contracts of Wes Matthews and DeAndre Jordan while taking on the longer term contracts of Tim Hardaway and Courtney Lee. And then there's also the matter of the pick. Now, as I said, it's not official what pick they would be sending to the Knicks, but again, I'm assuming it's a 2021 or 2023 first round pick with some kind of protections on it. And going that far into the future, trading away a pick is definitely a risky move for Dallas because anything could happen. Porzingis could continue to struggle with injury issues. Luka Doncic might plateau a little bit in his development, and you never really know where the Mavericks are going to end up. And one bad season at the wrong time could cause them to lose a ton of value to the Knicks. And if it is 2021, then that means that the Mavericks only have their own first round pick once over the next 3 drafts, obviously being 2020, which could hinder their development and where they go in the future and trying to build around these two international stars in Doncic and Porzingis. I do have some more overall points to go over for the Mavericks, but again, I'm going to focus on the trade for right now and then talk about some of the ramifications. So we're going to move on for the Knicks. Now, obviously, this is a bit of a weird timing, like I said, because it was kind of out of nowhere. Porzingis had been rumored to be a little bit upset with not being able to play this season. Maybe he was nearing coming back from his injury, and the Knicks didn't want him to play, one, because they didn't want to risk another injury, and two, they did not want to hinder their tanking efforts this season. They want to have to win more games than they wanted to. But it was always really just either speculation or a rumor here or there that Porzingis was unhappy, and I never really expected this to happen, one, so soon after the meeting, or really before this trade deadline. I had expected to maybe do an NBA Trade Machine episode on this once the details about the meeting came out and those reports came out, but I certainly didn't expect to be doing a actual trade review video on this, but here we are anyway. For the trade itself, there's two big benefits. One, future assets being Dennis Smith Jr., who, even though he didn't fit great in Dallas alongside Luka Doncic, still has a ton of potential moving forward. And then obviously the pick, depending on where it is, as well as where it falls when they actually receive it from Dallas. And the other is something that I kind of expected them to do maybe in some smaller deals, even potentially involving Dallas, but obviously not involving Porzingis. And that's dumping the salaries of both Courtney Lee and Tim Hardaway Jr., who are both good players, especially Hardaway. Courtney Lee a bit more of a complimentary piece, but the goal always was to try and dump at least one of those guys to open up even more cap space this summer, and they found the perfect deal to do that with Dallas. Because like I said, everybody that they're taking on that's not Dennis Smith Jr., being Wes Matthews and DeAndre Jordan, are expiring contracts and might even be bought out this season, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. So in dumping Lee and dumping Hardaway and getting in exchange expiring contracts, they have 2 full max slots available in free agency this summer. And this is not something that's unfamiliar necessarily to Knicks fans. They have done this before, trying to recruit players like LeBron James to their team by creating max contract space, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to sign a max contract player, but it does mean that they think, or at least they feel pretty confident about their ability to get at least 1, and now they have the ability to get 2 if they want. Now, the problem with that is, like I said, just because they feel confident about it and because they have the resources to, doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to sign a max level player in free agency, and there's not really a ton of precedent to say that it is going to happen. Really, Amari Stoudemire and Joakim Noah are the 2 most recent examples, and neither of those worked out exceptionally well. Stoudemire worked out better than Noah, but again, it's something that they've continued to try and count on, is sign big time players in free agency, and to this point it has not happened. And for me personally, I felt like if it was going to, it would be kind of the appeal of playing for the Knicks, the appeal of playing in Madison Square Garden, paired with the fact that you have a potential future star and an all-star in Kristaps Porzingis, and that would be kind of your joint pitch, as opposed to now just saying, here's 2 max slots, you can bring in 2 stars, and then go from there. That's not to say that this isn't going to work, and obviously their intention is to sign at least 1 or 2 max contract level players, and they've certainly positioned themselves well to do that with this trade, in addition to getting future assets, like I said, in Dennis Smith and the first round pick. So if you're a Celtics fan, maybe this makes you a bit nervous because it could just be a weird coincidence, but there are some rumblings and some rumors about the fact that Kyrie Irving is not necessarily a lock to re-sign in Boston, and I don't think just because the Knicks traded for Dennis Smith Jr., I don't think that means that they would just completely give up on pursuing Kyrie, so that might increase the possibility that he does join the Knicks, and then obviously Kevin Durant is the other big one, along with guys like Jimmy Butler and Kawhi Leonard. So moving forward, it's going to be something interesting to look at. This is very similar to how the Lakers positioned themselves to be a max contract player last offseason. Then obviously they ended up with LeBron. I'm not saying that's going to happen with a max contract player for the Knicks, but this is very similar in terms of how they're positioning themselves. And now that I've talked about the trade specifically, I'm going to move on to some overall thoughts. And the first one is Kristaps Porzingis going to play for the Mavericks this season? Like I said, he's yet to return from the knee injury that he suffered late last season. And obviously the intention of the Mavericks going into this season was to make the playoffs. They traded away their 2019 pick in order to move up to get Luka Doncic, and they signed guys like DeAndre Jordan in free agency to short deals, but big deals, with the idea of making the playoffs this season. So I'm assuming that they are getting some positive feedback from Porzingis that he will join the team for a stretch run for the last 30 or so games, maybe after the All-Star break, and that is when they're going to once again push for the playoffs. They've started to slide down the standings a little bit, but this trade is certainly something that's going to help them move in that direction. Like I said, with Porzingis, with Hardaway Jr., and to a lesser extent with Courtney Lee, they have certainly improved their roster in an immediate sense, and that's really my first big question is Kristaps Porzingis going to play for them this season? And I would imagine the answer is yes, depending on his health. The second thing I thought about, and this one being on the Knicks side, is why were they so impatient about trading away Kristaps Porzingis? Again, unless the details of the meeting were much worse than what was initially reported and he just flat out refused to re-sign with the Knicks or whatever because he is a restricted free agent this summer, unless they were much worse than what we were told through these reports, I don't really understand how quickly they went about this. It's not like the trade deadline was today. They could have waited a couple of days to try and feel out where Porzingis was at a little bit more. There was also a report that if they involved him in a trade for Anthony Davis, that Porzingis was not interested in signing or re-signing with New Orleans, so that maybe was something that they've been considering ever since the Anthony Davis trade request went down, and that upset Porzingis, and then they just felt like they had to move on and go with this deal for the Mavericks. But that's really my thing. Just like with the Anthony Davis trade request, one of the more interesting things about this is just the timing and how quickly the Knicks seem to move from that meeting to then trading away Porzingis in a matter of hours, really. But like I said earlier, if they are able to sign 1 or 2 max players in free agency this summer, then this trade is 100% worth it. They dump salary, they cleared space, they get future assets, and yes, they had to give up Porzingis to do it, but if they're able to sign 2 max guys, if Kyrie and Kevin Durant are playing in Madison Square Garden next season, this is 100% worth it but that really remains to be seen. So the value of this trade to the Knicks is not just now, but it also depends on their ability to sign max level players in free agency. And this is a very big sign that they are confident in their ability to do that. Whether they will actually be successful remains to be seen. And then my last point, which is much smaller than really any of the other things that I've talked about at this point, is just the buyout possibilities of potentially DeAndre Jordan or Wes Matthews. Like I said, the Knicks are very actively tanking, and both of those players would presumably help them win more games than maybe they would want to, and they're probably going to prioritize the development of some of their younger players anyway. So it's very possible that the Knicks do negotiate a buyout with those two players, and they could sign with some of the contenders around the league or some of the teams that maybe are looking for some help in the buyout market. The Sixers have had success with that last year. The Lakers are always a looming possibility. Toronto's a possibility. Any teams like that, this could have ramifications even for them potentially getting those players via a buyout. And yeah, as always, you guys can let me know down in the comment section your own thoughts. This was really unexpected. I expected to do an NBA Trade Machine episode on this, but not a trade review video. But this is just once again why I love the NBA so much. 72 hours ago, I was tweeting about how this was like the dullest trade deadline I can remember. Thon Maker was the big name being thrown out. And then 3 days later, Anthony Davis trade rumors are swirling, and Kristaps Porzingis is playing for the Dallas Mavericks. This is absolutely nuts. As always, I'm interested to hear y'all's thoughts, y'all's feedback, and if anything changes from the time that I recorded this to the time that's uploaded, I do apologize for that. I just wanted to get this out as quickly as I could once I collected my thoughts. But once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.